All right, my clock says 10:30, so we'll go ahead and get started. Hello and welcome to AV for our common community, what AI cannot replace. My name is Adam Nettesheim, and I've been part of the AV industry for almost two decades now. My experience ranges from directing live television to doing freelance 3D animation. I've volunteered doing AV work for faith-based communities. I've shot wedding videos and hockey games, and I've worked in the public and private sector. For my day job, I currently hold the post of multimedia specialist for the town of Erie. That's a local municipality here in Colorado. But I'm not here as a representative of that great town that I'm honored to serve. I'm here as a writer and as an industry professional who hopes to remind our industry of the important reason it exists, our why for being, if you will, and what we need to hang on to as we enter this new landscape, a landscape carved in part by humanity's and our industry's growing willingness to place dependence on artificial intelligence. Now, a disclaimer here, I have some passion on this subject, but I want to make it clear. We can disagree about AI and still be friends, okay? I know and like and love some folks who see AI very differently than I and utilize it in both within and outside of this industry in ways that I'm very uncomfortable with. I don't intend this talk to shame anybody, but I do hope to inspire what maybe I would consider our better angels are in this realm, or at least inspire us not to just take what comes so easily without giving it some deep thought. I don't claim to have all the answers either, not at all, but I am inviting all of us to wrestle with it for the sake of our world and for the sake of our industry. Again, I have some idealism about this industry, and maybe it comes from my fascination with it as a young age. Something about AV has drawn me since I had my parents' old VHS-C camcorder. I'd record myself and my brother and friends doing all manner of silliness. That's me and my brother there. I'm the handsome one. You can choose which one that is. And I'd plug that VHS-C camcorder into my VCR with the RCA plugs, and I put my fingers on the record and pause buttons as I selected my shots, and just magic would come, at least in my mind. And I love seeing now how my son, who has recently gotten into stop motion animation with his Legos, has done some pretty incredible work as he discovers the joy of creation in this media. There's something about AV that kept me interested from my youth. But thinking back on that old VHS-C camcorder, observing the gap between when I started playing with AV, when I was about my son's age, to now, 3 decades later, I marvel at the growth of our industry, the innovation, the tech that is more effective, more reliable, more transmittable, just more. And the show floor here is going to be a testament to all that. But when I think about the speed at which things moved in my lifetime, and especially how much faster things have moved in the past few years, I can't help but wonder what the future will look like as my son, if he chooses to, steps into this industry. And thinking on the future of this industry, it feels very different with how quickly AI has come in and made itself such a prominent part of it. Now, standing in any way against AI, in any way, even a nuanced way, can feel a bit like walking the street with one of those sandwich boards hung around your chest that reads, "The end is nigh," and people chuckle and pass by. Now, there's an expression, tilting at windmills, and that's thrown about as a way to wave away concerns that seem absurd. The origin of that saying comes from the story of Don Quixote, a man who may have had some wiring differences in his brain. The youth today might call him neurospicy. He fancied himself a knight of virtue in an age devoid of it. So one day he sees giants in the distance and he decides to rid the land of their threat. He charges them only to be dislodged from his horse and defeated, not by giants as he so perceived, but instead by windmills. So in our age, with an ever-growing presence of AI, anyone who speaks caution and temperance may be perceived as tilting at windmills. However, I'll also say, in keeping my ears open on this topic and trying to be open to some degree, it was remarkable how many advocates of AI were still like, listen, everybody, we don't know. We hope it's taking us to a good place, but we're kind of scared too. So now I want to be clear. My concerns about AI in this context, at least as it pertains to this talk, are the AI that especially and particularly deals in content creation where it makes, if it can be called making, by stealing from the ideas and hard work of others without their consent, where it requires no skill and care or concern for the audience, where it becomes so easy to use that I fear we will stop taking the time to make anything ourselves. I'm also very concerned when AI replaces accountable human institutions of trust, where information is dispensed but not discerned, generated with perhaps knowledge but not wisdom, where there is no real trust possible because there is no accountability for errors. A quote possibly erroneously attributed to Mark Twain says, "Be careful about reading health books. You may die of a misprint." Whoever said it, I can imagine would have infinitely greater concerns about our current methods of self-diagnosis. I may have concerns about AI more broadly, certainly as it pertains to job destruction and worker displacement. Who in our industry isn't at least a little concerned about that as it pertains to our work? But I don't mean to suggest that all AI is itself inherently an evil thing. I believe AI can be, as a tool, firmly within the grip of a species willing to love one another and care for one another with their tools, and willing to lay aside things that don't serve that ultimate purpose. Within that framework, AI can do some good in the world. There are likely some background processes that could be greatly improved by its mindful, boundaried presence. I'm also more thinking about opportunities it creates in accessibility for persons with disabilities or illnesses. Aggregating data for medical research seems potentially interesting. Language translation services that connect us more seems interesting. And the only reason I'm even moderately okay with this is because he gave his consent and profited from it before he died. But James Earl Jones still gets to be the voice of Darth Vader even after his passing, because he worked out a deal with Disney to create some sort of Vader simulator. Now, it's still a little weird because he doesn't get to have any artistic agency about the words that his voice is saying, so I think there's problems here. You can count me a conflicted Star Wars fan in that department. But I think AI can do some good in this world if we shepherd it well. But it's hard to shepherd something that runs way faster than you. That's why ranchers have sheepdogs and horses. But imagine a jacked sheep that could run 300 miles an hour and while still having the limits of a sheep brain and ethical capacities due to being livestock, somehow becomes more intelligent than the shepherd. How do you shepherd that? The new advancements that humans have adopted to do life more efficiently, or if you will, technology, has historically increased so slowly over time that we, theoretically, have had a long time to grapple with its implications and navigate a way that we all get to move forward together well. But any concerns about the speed of modern technology are small compared to the speed that AI especially is taking us, which seems to make even the most optimistic about AI a little uneasy. And you can count me as a little less than optimistic. I do believe AI is more giant than windmill, certainly if we don't handle it with care. But to slay just the giant of AI will only mean that another giant of some nature will stroll by in no time. Quixote's story is not just remembered for seeing giants and attacking them and then getting his butt kicked by a windmill. His story has endured and made an impact on our culture even today because even though he wore rusty armor and rode a flea-bitten old horse, he chose to live with chivalry and honor in an age that did not reward it. Because when you fight a giant that turns out to be a windmill, sure, you get your butt kicked. But when you live with chivalry and honor and charity in an age without it, sure, you may get laughed at, but you will also slowly begin to change the people around you. You elevate them with how you treat them. And how we consider one another, as I'll get to shortly, is, I believe, the bedrock of our industry. I'm hoping as AI grows bigger and bigger and takes over more and more, that we will make choices about how we navigate with it and without it, based on higher virtues than just mere convenience, immediacy, and looking to satisfy our cravings. Before we get into the specifics of how I believe AI presents our industry with a choice, I'm going to tell an ancient story about two brothers. These boys were twins, but even so, the one who got out 5 seconds before the other one was considered the eldest brother. In that ancient culture, being older, even by a few seconds, meant that you were given the birthright of being the prime inheritor of your father's estate and all the responsibilities and privileges that came with that. So one day the older brother comes back home after a whole lot of hunting without a whole lot of finding. He's wiped out, he's hungry, he's tired, and he sees his younger brother is over there by the fire and he's cooking a pot of lentils for lunch. Have you ever been so hungry that anything looks really, really good to you? Apparently, to this guy, he was so hungry that a pot of beans looked really, really good to him. But they looked really, really good to him, and we'll see how good shortly. The older brother staggers over to the younger, and in his frantic, famished state, he demands some of them beans. Now, if you have siblings, as I've shared that I do, you may know the experience of one sibling having something that the other sibling wants. And maybe the sibling that wants it isn't asking very nicely. And then the sibling that has the thing that the other sibling wants can be a little bit of a stinker about it. And that's exactly how this plays out. The younger brother, I fully suspect, just being a stinker, says to the older brother that if he wants his beans, he's got to give him his birthright. Maybe he had no expectation this older brother would actually take him up on his insane offer. Maybe he just thought that his older brother would whine and pout and go off in a huff. But instead, his famished and tired, in his famished and tired and impatient state, the older brother took his younger brother up on this ridiculous offer. For convenience, immediacy, and because they smelled really, really good, the older brother sold his birthright for a pot of beans. From my viewpoint, our industry is facing a similar choice. I think we are very much in danger of giving up something very, very important in the name of convenience, immediacy, and even though it may not smell like anything, we are easily led to believe it will satisfy our cravings. It's flashy and requires little to no effort, and there seems to be no accountability for the theft of intellectual property and no accountability for breach of trust. For the past 2 years, I've been given the privilege to speak here at the AVXpo, and in that time, I've offered an idealistic, perhaps overly simplistic view of our industry, and in this third year, it will be no different. In fact, I'm doubling down on that idealism, even in the presence of encroaching and pervasive AI, a force not shaking just our industry, but shaking so many aspects of our modern world. But the point of my talk is not as much about the dangers of AI itself. As much as AI may concern me, it doesn't scare me half as much as what we, the humans, seem to be willing to leave behind as we let AI take us forward. And I don't mean leaving VHS tapes for digital or coax for wireless. I'm concerned that with all of the advances in AI, we are losing this fundamental bedrock truth of our industry, the why of our existence, our industry birthright, if you will. AV is a communications industry. And at the heart of communication is human relationships. When we forget that, when we neglect that, we are in danger of losing our reason for being in this industry. And we will then lose the capacity to do the good in the world that AV has and can still do. I assert that AV is inherently relational and that it is not able to exist in this intended form without human beings relating to one another through it. AV is a tool of communication from one person to another, transmitting ideas and the works of the intellect and imagination. Communication requires at least two people. Communication can happen across time and space, like when you read Dickens or Tolkien or Shakespeare, even though they're long dead. Cinema is a collaboration of many individuals, primarily led by the vision of one individual, to transmit inspiration, imagination, and ideas in a similar way. And maybe centuries from now, the future will be studying the ancient works of Gerwig, Malick, and Spielberg. But what if there is no Shakespeare, or Spielberg, or Tolkien, or the Beatles, or Leonard Cohen, or Adele? No originators of thought and craft and art, just an algorithmic slurry of all that came before it being blurped out into capsules that claims to scratch any itch, tickle any fancy, and fog any mind. Now, sure, the great writers and artists, they studied, and they were inspired by, and even sometimes they copied from those who came before them. But all along the way, it was humanity engaging with its divine inheritance of living in this world and sharing that experience with other humans who are living their own lives. Art is communal, but remove the human at the headworks of that relationship, and it's no longer a relationship. It's no longer communication. And communication is AV's birthright. It's why we exist. AV is communication, and communication is connection. But not only is what we share important, how we share it also matters. The means and method of communication is also a way to communicate something. And AV is a powerful force for communication. I love the story of one of the first showings of recorded film where the audience freaked out and ran away because the projector was showing a train entering the station and they all thought they were going to die. The moving images had a profound effect. Even some early observers of photography were concerned that taking a photo of someone was to take their soul. We may chuckle at these thoughts and it may seem superstitious to us, but when we observe a picture of someone, we don't see it as paper and ink or pixels. We see it as something that draws our hearts to the person in a deep way. There is a connection that exists that transcends the medium. There is something of our souls that isn't perhaps stolen, but in some way seems to be transmitted to one another through these images, be they still or moving at 30 or 60 frames per second. In addition to the how, what we communicate matters, and why we communicate matters deeply. At its best, through AV that takes its relational responsibility seriously, ideas can be shared, imaginations can be inspired, hearts can be given courage, and certainly entertained. Our human experience is informed and enriched and embodied to live more as we were made to live, to be more human, because we connected with humans living their own story through AV. Now, I'm also aware that as much as I have concerns about AI, human beings are not always safe either. A human is a fragile creature and full of frailties and fault lines. We are broken and dangerous and sometimes malicious and selfish. We've seen the effects of what can happen when we disregard our common humanity through AV, and we are poorer for it. It can be tempting in light of that evil, that humans are dangerous, that we may think if we're going to hit anyways, if something's going to hurt us anyways, it seems less painful to our hearts to be hit by an unsentient algorithm than a person who chose to do that harm. It may be tempting to blow the whistle and tell humanity, because of the harm you've done, get out of the pool and we're going to let the bots have their shot. Giving our humanity over to AI, for me, is no good thing. But being a human with other humans is not always a picnic either. Being human is going to require some effort, some trial and error, some willingness to sacrifice for the greater good. I believe we get to choose how we live in this world. I believe there is a spark of the divine in every person, the thumbprint of the Maker that means every person is worthy of dignity and care. We are responsible to each other and for each other. We need one another, and how we treat one another matters. And that absolutely includes how we care for one another or don't through AV. It's certainly a discussion we're having at my job, my day job as a government employee. In what ways can AI serve to keep the public trust? And in what ways would utilizing it erode the public trust? These questions are not easy as AI becomes more and more standard across more and more areas of our lives. AI may be programmed to follow parameters until somebody changes that programming, but it will never have an actual conscience that can be pricked when it sees that its actions have caused harm. AI cannot be held accountable for its actions. AI cannot, if you'll forgive the word, repent and change and actively choose to seek the good of all people. It can only do what is within its parameters until somehow it gets smarter than those parameters and can program itself. But even then, it won't ever have the most valuable things I believe humans have, a soul. My faith tells me that there is something about two or more people being connected together that does something in the unseen spaces too. It creates a disturbance in the force, if you will. And I believe that connection, perhaps differently, but still present, exists when we are connected across technology. But if AI is no longer connecting people to one another, then it is not relational. It is not in keeping with the reason this industry exists. AI may take over sectors of our industry. It may make our jobs obsolete in their current form. It may outpace any human efforts that any humans are capable of in content creation in every discipline. I don't know what form this industry will take in the next 3 decades when my son is in his 40s. I'm sure we cannot fathom the innovation and cannot imagine the possibilities. But what I refuse to give up on as tech changes so much of our existence, and we willingly offer AI so much of ourselves, little by little, convenience by convenience, apathy by apathy, what we all should refuse to give up on is our responsibility to that which AI will never be able to truly replace, each other. It is to this fight that you are called to be a knight of AV. Now, I know that sounds ridiculously idealistic. I know we have day jobs. We all have requirements and tasks that we're called to complete. I'm grateful to feel supported in my job to serve with my heart intact. But what do we do in our industry if it takes a turn that we don't support? What should someone do if their employers want them to practice our craft in a way that, maybe isn't wrong and still fits within the larger scope of their ethics, but it grinds their gears a bit? How do we know what hills we're willing to die on? Everyone's got to draw their lines and decide what they can live with. But if you're choosing to stick it out, even if you're conflicted, we have a chance to get creative. I mean, that's part of what we love about this industry, right? The chance to solve artistic and informational problems through AV, making cool looking stuff that transmits something good into this world and hopefully makes people's lives better. Maybe the industry runs headlong in a direction we don't support. Well, we can choose how we will navigate that. We can show up and show good work by how we make things happen creatively and collaboratively. Show why AV that's done by humans, with humans, and for humans is so much better than not. And a live person, someone caring for others with their craft, is number one, going to be a better human being, and two, is going to be a better coworker, a better boss, a better employee, etc. But maybe in certain spaces, we'll lose the capacity to even see humanity as a factor anymore. If something does come up that crosses that line for you, and a live person is going to be able to sniff that out and make a different choice with their life quicker than someone who is stuck with their head down and their heart on a shelf, who falls too deep in, and when they look around, they can't see a way out. We may not be able to track the AI advancement enough to be able to sufficiently point to a specific algorithm and tell someone all the ways that this algorithm is bad. But we can point to our own humanity and the humanity of others and say that it is very good. If we believe our human existence is good, and again, not everything that humans choose to do, but the bedrock essence of being alive and looking out for each other, even if we can't explain everything about AI, and who can, we can know that things that separate us from our divine inheritance rather than embolden it, things that separate us from the privilege of being responsible for each other, these things that separate us from those things, maybe not the things themselves, but the way that we have chosen to use them, that is bad. Tools are just tools, and it's the use of them that makes them good or bad. AV can be a tool for such good, but we've also seen how it can be used to cause a lot of harm. AI can be a force for good, but we've also seen how it can cause a lot of harm. In the book Atomic Habits, James Clear, the author, says, "You do not rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. Systems require work and vigilance and dedication and sacrifice. And those things are boring. Love for your fellow man, even in our industry, requires patience and kindness, not market envy, not trying to squash competitors at the expense of goodness while thumping our chest and killing our consciences. Love may not always be quickly commercially profitable, but it is a more sustainable way for humanity forward in the long term. And the long term is what we need to have in mind if we want to continue being humans in this world where AI offers us every convenience, attracts us with immediacy, and facilitates a satisfaction to our cravings. My real concern is that if we don't make the choice for life and goodness and each other right now, we won't care about making that choice when the stakes are impossibly higher. T.S. Eliot famously wrote in his poem, The Hollow Men, "This is the way the world ends. This is the way the world ends. This is the way the world ends. Not with a bang, but a whimper." Now, my concern with AI is the world is not going to end with a bang or a whimper, but with a meh. So that feels pretty heavy to me. So to break the tension of such a heavy thought with a terrible joke, Monty Python said there were knights who say "nee," but may we knights of AV never say meh. Let us choose to care, however we step forward. I don't share this talk to insult anyone who is utilizing AI or to discourage anyone that shares my concerns. Rather, wherever you land, I want to encourage you to be so present in life that anything that disassociates you from your divine inheritance and separates you from our call to love one another becomes inherently distasteful to you, and you just reject it, even if it comes in a flashy, easy, effortless, high-res package. We can all choose to be knights of AV, as ridiculous as that may look sometimes. We get to choose where this industry goes. We get to choose where the weight of our efforts contributes to a decline, propels us towards positive changes, or even just holds us back from the brink. We get to choose how AI is utilized or not, when it's a tool and when it's our master. By extension of all our efforts or lack thereof, we will contribute to the direction the world goes. But maybe in the end, things are going to move at a speed that one person cannot stop. But we get to choose how to live our one precious, divinely imprinted life even so. We get to choose the work of our hands. We get to choose who we do it for, why we do it, and who we do it with. We get to choose love as the center of our practice and remind ourselves that relationship and responsibility toward one another is the bedrock of this industry. Tech advances may come and go, but with human hearts beating in our chests, the breath of the divine in our lungs, and our minds and bodies committed to loving our neighbor as ourselves, come what may, choosing that is going to make a far better future than if we plug our ears, close our eyes, and try to make a quick buck on the way down. Choose life. And in your work within this industry, AV can be a tool for you to use to love your neighbor with. And one final plea. As a father with 3 amazing kids, one of whom is interested in tech and to some extent AV, I'm pleading, let's not screw this remarkable industry up for those who will come after us. When we lead with love for our fellow humans, whether we utilize AI or not, and how we do it if we do choose to, if we do it with nobility and fidelity to our common community, our industry will be all the better for it. If each of us are willing to look a little foolish from time to time because we want to ensure that what our industry does honors this primary function to communicate, to connect humans to each other, and to love our neighbor as ourselves, we'll all be the better for it. Our common community is what AI cannot replace. Without the duty to connect humans to each other, what is AV for? Let's not lose our birthright for beings. But it's going to take some work. So this is your call to be a knight of AV. Will you accept? Thank you for enduring my idealistic and perhaps overly simplistic view on this. It was a gift to share this space with you today, and so you could have made a lot of different choices, and you have a lot of other options as this great conference goes on. But I thank you for spending this time with me. If any of this has been interesting to you, I am a writer, so my website's up there. We're having hosting issues right now, so you can write it down and then check it later, probably within the week. But I just want to thank you all for your time. Thank you for being here, and God bless.